The verdict of exile. The trial. The chamber of eternal judgment existed in a space between spaces, a massive sphere where gravity worked in all directions at once. Thousands of representatives from the Galactic Council floated in their designated zones, their forms as varied as the stars themselves. Crystalline beings refracted light in impossible patterns. Gaseous entities swirled in contained fields. Ancient machine consciousnesses hummed with mathematical precision. At the center of it all, standing on the single platform designed for species that required solid ground, stood Ambassador Michael Chen of Earth, alone. "The evidence is conclusive," declared Supreme Arbiter Kolvan, his 6 eyes blazing with righteous certainty. His species, the Valorians, had maintained order in the galaxy for 12,000 years. Humanity stands accused of reckless interference in the Korvax crisis, violation of the non-intervention protocols, and demonstrating patterns of behavior fundamentally incompatible with galactic stability. Chen's hands clenched behind his back, but his voice remained steady. "We stand accused of preventing genocide. The Korvax homeworld was 3 days from complete annihilation. The Draxian Empire was preparing to sterilize. The Draxian Empire was exercising its sovereign right to eliminate a threat within its borders," interrupted Council Member Zithara, her insectoid mandibles clicking with irritation. The Korvax had been designated a Category 5 risk. Their uncontrolled technological expansion endangered 17 neighboring systems. They were refugees seeking new worlds after their sun went supernova. Chen's composure cracked. "They were families, children, and you would have let them die because your mathematical models said it was the logical solution. Logic is all that separates civilization from chaos, human," Kolvan replied coldly. "Your species has been part of this council for merely 73 years. The protocols you violated have maintained peace for millennia. You cannot comprehend the delicate balance we maintain." A holographic display materialized, showing a timeline of human activity since first contact. Chen watched as incident after incident was highlighted. Human traders defending a Polarian convoy from pirates violating the natural economic order. Human scientists sharing medical technology with pre-spaceflight civilizations, breaking the Cultural Preservation Directive. Human diplomats negotiating peace between the Zenthar and Mokhtar tribes, interfering in what the Council deemed necessary evolutionary conflict. Every single action had saved lives. Every single action had violated Council law. "The Galactic Council has deliberated," Kolvan announced, his voice echoing through the chamber. "By unanimous vote of all 843 member species, humanity is hereby found guilty of systematic violation of galactic law. The sentence is immediate and permanent quarantine to your native star system. All human colonies beyond the Sol system must be evacuated within 1 standard year. The quarantine barrier will be erected to prevent any future human expansion or interference." Chen felt the words like physical blows. "You're condemning us for having compassion? We are protecting the galaxy from a species too young, too emotional, and too dangerous to understand the consequences of their actions," Kolvan said. "This council has spoken. Humanity is exiled." The platform beneath Chen's feet began to descend, lowering him away from the assembled species. As he sank below their level, he looked up at thousands of alien faces. Some showed satisfaction. Most showed nothing at all. The cold indifference of those who had never known what it meant to fight for someone who couldn't fight for themselves. "You'll regret this," Chen said quietly. "One day when you need someone who fights for what's right instead of what's logical, you'll remember this moment." No one answered. The platform completed its descent, and Ambassador Michael Chen left the Chamber of Eternal Judgment for the last time. The reasons behind exile. The Korvax incident had been the breaking point, but it wasn't the beginning. Captain Jennifer Torres remembered the day humanity first encountered the Council's true nature. It was during the Polarian escort mission, 3 years into humanity's membership. Her cargo ship, the Mumbai Star, had been transporting grain to a colony when they encountered a Polarian distress call. The Polarians were being attacked by Crick's raiders, pirates who preyed on weak targets throughout the outer rim. Torres and her small crew had driven off the raiders, saving 200 Polarian civilians in the process. The Council had fined humanity 70 million credits for disrupting the natural economic equilibrium. They told us the Polarians needed to develop their own defensive capabilities, Torres had testified before the inquiry. They were perfectly happy to let those families die so the Polarians would be motivated to build weapons. That's not civilization. That's cruelty with a thesis statement. The pattern repeated across human space. Dr. Elizabeth Hoffman violated the Cultural Preservation Directive by sharing a cure for Yervian plague, saving 3 million lives. The Council censured her and quarantined the Yervians for unnatural population growth. Commander David Okonkwo prevented a civil war on Theta Centauri by negotiating a peace treaty, and the Council accused him of stunting natural political evolution. Each time humanity defended its actions, each time the Council cited their ancient protocols. The laws had been written by species who had forgotten what it meant to struggle, to suffer, to feel the weight of another's pain as if it were your own. The philosophical divide was unbridgeable. The Council believed in observation, calculation, and the slow march of predetermined evolutionary paths. Humanity believed in action, choice, and the radical idea that suffering was never acceptable when you had the power to stop it. The Korvax crisis simply made the conflict impossible to ignore. When the Draxian Empire declared the Korvax an existential threat and began orbital bombardment of their refugee settlements, Earth's Third Fleet had been the closest military force. Admiral Sarah Vex received the distress call and made a choice that would echo through history. She intervened. The battle lasted 6 hours. The Draxian fleet, confident in their numerical superiority, had not anticipated the ferocity of human tactics. Vex used maneuvers that sacrificed shield efficiency for speed, weapons arrangements that violated standard doctrine, and a willingness to take damage that no Council species could fathom. "You fight like you have nothing to lose," the Draxian commander had transmitted before retreating. "We fight like we have everything to protect," Vex had replied. 2.3 million Korvax refugees survived because of her decision. The Council convened an emergency session and branded humanity as dangerous radicals whose emotional decision-making threatened the entire galactic order. Now, as the quarantine barrier phased into existence around human space, a shimmering wall of energy that would prevent any ship from entering or leaving the Sol system, humanity faced its moment of truth. "They're sealing us in like a disease," said Chen as he watched the barrier complete its construction from Earth's orbital station. Sarah Vex stood beside him, her admiral's uniform crisp despite the chaos consuming Earth's governments. "Maybe we are a disease, Ambassador, a disease called hope, and they're terrified it might be contagious. Humanity's dark period, the first year after the barrier's activation nearly destroyed humanity. 17 colony worlds beyond Sol had to be evacuated. 12 million humans scrambled to pack their lives into transport ships and flee back to the birth system before the deadline. Some didn't make it. The colony on Kepler 442b, too far to evacuate in time, watched helplessly as the barrier sealed them outside. They lasted 8 months before their supplies ran out. The last transmission from a child named Marcus Way simply said, "We forgive you, Earth. Keep being human." The galactic economy collapsed for humanity overnight. Trade routes that had brought prosperity to Earth vanished. Technologies licensed from Council species became useless without maintenance support. Unemployment hit 40% within 6 months. Food riots erupted in Neo-Shanghai, New Lagos, and the Mars colonies. Governments fell. The United Earth Assembly dissolved as member nations blamed each other for the catastrophe. The Moon's independence movement gained traction. Mars threatened to cut off supplies to Earth. Jupiter's orbital stations considered declaring themselves neutral in hopes the Council would lift their quarantine. Humanity was fragmenting. Admiral Sarah Vex watched it all from her command deck aboard the Indomitable, orbiting Earth's moon. At 63, she had fought in 3 wars and negotiated 24 peace treaties. She had earned her stars through competence and courage. Now she saw the species she loved tearing itself apart. "We're better than this," she whispered. Her Chief of Staff, Commander Amir Hassan, stood beside her. With respect, Admiral, we're exactly this. Take away our prosperity, and we show our true nature. No. Vex's voice hardened. This is our fear talking, but fear can be transformed. It can become fuel. She opened a priority channel to every government, every military force, every corporation and colony still operating in human space. The transmission reached 4 billion people simultaneously. This is Admiral Sarah Vex. I'm initiating the Forge Initiative. The plan was audacious, perhaps insane. Humanity would stop fighting over scraps and start building from nothing. Every resource would be pooled. Every scientist, engineer, and worker would contribute to a single goal, making humanity stronger in isolation than they had ever been as part of the Council. They locked us in here because they fear what we are, Vex's broadcast continued. Let's show them they were right to be afraid, not because we're violent, but because we're unstoppable when we're united. The response was immediate. The Mars colonies offered their manufacturing facilities. Luna contributed its research labs. Earth's fractured governments, seeing a path forward, began to cooperate. Within 3 months, the Forge Initiative had mobilized 90% of human infrastructure. The work began in earnest. Research teams attacked problems the Council had declared unsolvable. Without access to Council technology, humanity had to innovate from first principles. Dr. Yuki Tanaka developed the quantum entanglement communication system that didn't require Council relay stations. Engineer Marcus Rodriguez designed fusion, reactors 3 times more efficient than anything the Council possessed. Biologist Amara Okafor created self-sustaining food systems that could feed billions, but it was the military innovations that would change everything. The Council's superiority had always rested on their energy shield technology and faster-than-light drives. Both were Council-licensed tech that humanity had used but never fully understood. Now, cut off from Council support, humanity's scientists had to reinvent both from scratch. It took 12 years. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. A collaboration between quantum physicists and empaths, humans with naturally heightened emotional sensitivity. They discovered that consciousness itself could interface with quantum fields in ways Council technology never explored. The resulting empathy shields could adapt and learn from attacks, evolving in real time based on the operator's intuitive understanding of threats. It was technology that required something the Council species had engineered out of themselves: feeling. Meanwhile, humanity's fractured political landscape solidified into something unprecedented. Not a world government, humanity was too diverse for that, but a confederation bound by shared purpose. The Earth Federation was born, with representatives from every colony, every nation, every cultural group given voice. Ambassador Chen, now retired from diplomacy, watched the first Federation assembly with tears in his eyes. They wanted to break us, he said. Instead, they forged us into something stronger. Admiral Vex, now Grand Marshal of the Federation Defense Force, stood at the viewing port of humanity's first wholly original warship. The Phoenix represented 15 years of desperate innovation, sleek, deadly, and powered by technology no Council species would recognize. How many more can we build? She asked her engineering chief. We have shipyards at Luna, Mars, Titan, and Europa. We can produce 100 capital ships per year, with full fighter complements. Vex smiled grimly. Good. Begin construction. Marshal, we're quarantined. Who exactly are we preparing to fight? Vex looked out at the barrier that imprisoned her species, the shimmering wall that was supposed to be humanity's cage. I don't know, Commander, but when the galaxy needs us again, and they will, I want to make sure we can answer that call. 50 years of silence time moved differently on each side of the quarantine barrier. For the Galactic Council, 50 years was a footnote in their ancient chronicles. Species that measured their history in millennia barely noticed the absence of one troublesome, emotional race. The Council congratulated itself on maintaining order. Without humanity's destabilizing influence, the galaxy settled into comfortable predictability. The Korvax, those refugees humanity had died to save, were eventually integrated into Draxian territory as labor-class citizens. The Council called it a diplomatic triumph. The Pelarians developed their own defense forces just as the Council predicted, though it cost them 200,000 lives to pirate raids first. The Zenthar-Mokhtar conflict resolved itself when the Zenthar simply exterminated the Mokhtar entirely. Natural selection, declared the Council observers. Peace reigned. The cold, calculated peace of mathematics and inevitability. Human space became a mystery. The quarantine barrier prevented all communication and scanning. For all the Council knew, humanity had collapsed into pre-spaceflight barbarism. Some species theorized they had destroyed themselves in nuclear war. Others suggested they had simply given up, withering away in isolation. Young Council members, those who had matured in the 50 years since the exile, knew humans only as cautionary tales. The emotional species, they called them in academy lectures, a reminder of why feeling must be subordinate to logic. But in the deepest archives, a few old beings remembered. Kolvan, now ancient even by Valorian standards, sometimes accessed the records of humanity's trial. He would watch Ambassador Chen's final words on repeat. "You'll regret this." "Empty threat," Kolvan would mutter. But he never deleted the file. In the Outer Rim, where Council authority was weak, stories persisted. Traders whispered about ghost ships near the barrier, massive vessels that appeared on long-range sensors for just moments before vanishing. Pirates who ventured too close to human space reported strange energy signatures that made their instruments malfunction. The Council dismissed such tales as superstition. They were wrong. Behind the barrier, humanity had not withered. They had evolved. The Sol system now bristled with defenses that would make any Council admiral weep with envy. Hidden shipyards operated throughout the asteroid belt and Kuiper belt, producing vessels at a rate that would have shocked the galaxy. Humanity had built a fortress. But more importantly, they had built a purpose. "We're not prisoners," Grand Marshal Vex told the Federation Assembly on the 50th anniversary of the exile. She was 113 years old, kept vital by advanced medical technology humanity had developed without Council assistance. "We're watchers. The galaxy may not want us, but we still watch over it, because that's what humans do." In secret, humanity had found ways to pierce the barrier with passive sensors. They couldn't communicate out, couldn't send ships through, but they could observe. They watched the Council's activities with growing concern. The galaxy was becoming sterile. Species that developed too quickly were regulated. Civilizations that didn't fit Council models were corrected. The vibrant, chaotic diversity that had once characterized the galaxy was being slowly smoothed into uniformity. "They're creating a museum," said Dr. Tanaka, now Chief Science Advisor, "a galaxy frozen in amber, where nothing unexpected ever happens." "Then they're fools," Vex replied. "The universe doesn't care about their order. Something will come that their mathematics can't predict. And when it does." She left the sentence unfinished, but everyone in the room understood. Humanity would be ready. The 50 years of silence were ending, though only humanity knew it. Their sensors had detected something new, anomalies at the galaxy's edge. Energy signatures that matched no known technology. Movement patterns that suggested purpose and intelligence. Something was coming. Something vast and hungry and utterly alien to everything the Council thought they understood about the universe. And when it arrived, the galaxy would learn a terrible truth. Sometimes those you cast out are the only ones who can save you. The price of pride. The nightmare arrives. The distress signal reached Council Central from the Outer Rim colony of Veritas Prime at 0347 Standard Galactic Time. It lasted 14 seconds before cutting to static. "This is Veritas Prime to any Council vessel. We are under attack by unknown." The transmission dissolved into screams and a sound like reality tearing itself apart. Then, nothing. Council. Military Command initially classified it as a technical malfunction. Outer Rim colonies were notorious for outdated equipment. They dispatched a single frigate to investigate, expecting to find embarrassed colonists and faulty transmitters. The frigate never returned. 2 days later, a second colony went silent. Then a third. Then an entire system. Supreme Arbiter Kolvan stood in the emergency session of the Council, his 6 eyes reviewing the fragmentary data with growing horror. The holographic display showed the last images transmitted from Veritas Prime, massive ships emerging from what appeared to be tiers in space itself, vessels that looked organic and mechanical simultaneously, their hulls covered in a substance that seemed to absorb light. "What are we looking at?" demanded Counselor Zithara, her usual confidence replaced by something foreign to her species, fear. "First contact with a hostile species," replied Admiral Genkar of the Council Defense Fleet. The Valorian military commander was legendary for his tactical brilliance, 500 years of experience in maintaining galactic security. "We're designating them the Karvesh Collective based on linguistic fragments we've decoded from their transmissions." "What do they want?" asked Council Member Tavera, a crystalline whose species prized negotiation above all else. "Everything." Genkar expanded the tactical display. Red markers indicated Karvesh-controlled systems, spreading across the outer rim like a cancer. "They don't negotiate. They don't communicate. They arrive, they overwhelm, they consume. Every colony, every resource, every being. Our intelligence suggests they're processing entire populations into some kind of biomechanical slurry to fuel their war machine." The chamber erupted in chaos. 843 species all trying to process the impossible. The Council, which had maintained galactic peace for 12 millennia, was facing extinction. "We'll dispatch the Third Fleet," Kolvan declared, his voice cutting through the noise. "Admiral Genkar, you will engage and destroy these invaders. Show them why the Council has endured for so long." The Admiral's expression was grim. "As you command, Supreme Arbiter." The Third Fleet was the pride of Council military doctrine. 200 capital ships, each one a masterpiece of technology refined over millennia. They were crewed by species engineered for warfare, their tactics calculated by artificial intelligences that had wargamed every possible scenario. They met the Karvesh at the threshold system, a strategic choke point that would determine control of the entire outer rim. The battle lasted 47 minutes. The Karvesh weapons bypassed energy shields as if they didn't exist. Their ships moved with impossible precision, adapting to Council tactics in real time. Every weapon the Council deployed, the Karvesh analyzed, absorbed, and countered. It was like fighting an enemy that learned faster than you could adapt. Admiral Genkar's final transmission was played before the Council 3 days later. "They're not just beating us, they're learning from us. Every ship we lose makes them stronger. Every tactic we use is turned against us. This isn't a war. It's an evolution event, and we're the food. May the calculations forgive us all." 173 ships were destroyed. The surviving vessels retreated in chaos, carrying stories of an enemy that couldn't be stopped by logic, mathematics, or superior technology. The Karvesh advance continued unopposed. Within 3 months, 12 Council worlds had fallen. Populations that had existed for millions of years were processed into fuel for the Karvesh war machine. The Council's perfect order was disintegrating as species fled toward the galactic core, abandoning the outer rim entirely. Panic spread like wildfire. Some species withdrew to their home systems, building desperate defenses. Others pledged allegiance to the Karvesh, hoping to survive through collaboration. The mathematical models that had predicted galactic stability for millennia suddenly showed only one outcome: total conquest within 1 standard year. The Council, for the first time in its 12,000-year history, faced something their calculations couldn't solve: an enemy that evolved faster than they could adapt. And in their desperation, someone spoke the forbidden name. What about the humans? The desperate debate. The suggestion came from Council member Tavera during an emergency session in the Council's backup chamber. The primary one had been abandoned as the Karvesh pushed deeper into Council space. Her crystalline form was fractured, stress cracks running through her structure from weeks of constant crisis meetings. "Excuse me." Colvin's voice was dangerous. The ancient Valorian had aged decades in 3 months. "Did you just suggest we contact the quarantined species?" "I'm suggesting we consider every option. Tavera replied, her voice resonating through the chamber. The Karvesh are 3 systems away from Valorian Prime, Supreme Arbiter. Your homeworld, 5 systems from Crystalline Home, 7 from the core worlds. We've lost every engagement. Our fleets are in retreat. Our defensive doctrine is obsolete against an enemy that adapts faster than we can respond. The humans were exiled for good reason. Counselor Zathara's mandibles clicked furiously. They're emotional, unpredictable, dangerous. And we're dying, Tavera said flatly. She activated a holographic display showing the Karvesh advance. In 50 years of quarantine, not a single probe we've sent near human space has returned. We assumed they'd collapsed or destroyed themselves. But what if they didn't? What if they've been doing what humans always did? Adapting, surviving, building. We exiled them for being warriors. Now we need warriors. We need soldiers who follow orders, not reckless sentimentalists who can't comprehend galactic strategy, Genkar countered. The Admiral had lost 3 fleets to the Karvesh. His tactical pride was in ruins. Besides, even if we wanted to contact them, the quarantine barrier is designed to be impenetrable. That was the point. Then we modify it, Tavera insisted. Or we die maintaining our pride. I'd rather beg humans for help than watch the galaxy burn. Colvin rose to his full height, his 6 eyes blazing. You would have us crawl back to a species we deemed unworthy? You would have us admit we were wrong? Yes, Tavera said simply. Because being right doesn't matter if we're all dead. The debate raged for 6 hours. Species that had never raised their voices in millennia shouted across the chamber. Ancient alliances fractured as some species argued for isolationism, while others advocated for desperate measures. The mathematical models were run and rerun, each showing the same result. Without intervention, galactic civilization would cease to exist within 1 year. Finally, the vote was called. All in favor of attempting contact with the quarantined human species and requesting military assistance. Colvan's voice was hollow, as if each word cost him something precious. The results appeared on the central display. 47 in favor. 3 against. 1,093 abstentions. The cowards won't even commit to a decision, muttered Admiral Genkar. But we have enough for action, Tavera said. Supreme Arbiter, we need a delegation. Someone to approach the barrier and I'll go, Colvan interrupted. Everyone turned to stare at the ancient Valorian. I was the one who pronounced their sentence. It should be me who asks them to break it. The delegation prepared in silence. Colvan, Tavera, and Admiral Genkar, representing the judiciary, diplomatic, and military branches of the Council, would approach the quarantine barrier together. They loaded their vessel with every greeting protocol, every diplomatic code, and every apology they could script. It still felt inadequate. As their ship approached the shimmering wall that had imprisoned humanity for 50 years, Colvan found himself accessing those old files again. Ambassador Chen's final words echoed in his mind. You'll regret this. I do, Colvan whispered to the empty bridge. More than you can imagine. First contact redux, the quarantine barrier shimmered like a soap bubble stretched across an entire star system. The Council delegation's ship approached slowly, broadcasting greetings on every frequency known to galactic science. For 10 hours, there was no response. Perhaps they really did destroy themselves, Admiral Genkar said, though his tone suggested he didn't believe it. Then space itself. Rippled, massive platforms emerged from what appeared to be nothing, stealth technology so advanced that even Council sensors couldn't detect them until they chose to reveal themselves. Dozens of them, each bristling with weapons that made Genkar's military instincts scream in alarm. Those aren't Council designs, he breathed. Those weapon configurations, the power signatures, how is this possible? More ships appeared. Sleek vessels that bore no resemblance to the crude human craft of 50 years ago. They moved with precision that rivaled Council military formations, taking up positions that any tactician would recognize as a perfect kill box. We're being targeted, Tavera noted calmly. 147 weapon locks. They could vaporize us at any moment. A transmission arrived. Audio only, which seemed deliberately primitive until Colvan realized it was a power play. They were being contacted on humanity's terms. This is Grand Marshal Sarah Vex of the Earth Federation Defense Force. The voice was elderly but sharp as a blade. You've approached the boundary of human sovereign space. State your purpose. Colvan activated his own transmission, and for the first time in his 5,000-year life, He felt genuine humility. Grand Marshal, I am Supreme Arbiter Colvan of the Galactic Council. We come requesting aid. Silence stretched for 30 seconds. When Vex spoke again, there was something in her voice, not quite amusement, but close. I'm sorry, could you repeat that? My hearing isn't what it used to be. She's making us say it again, Tavera realized. She's making us beg. Colvan closed his eyes. We come requesting military aid against an enemy we cannot defeat. The Galactic Council formally requests assistance from humanity. Another long pause. Then you're the one who exiled us. I remember watching the recording. Too young, too emotional, too dangerous. Those were your exact words, weren't they? Yes. And now you need the dangerous emotional species to save you. Yes. Interesting. The word dripped with implications. Marshal Genkar, you're there too, aren't you? I recognize your ship signature. Valor-class command vessel. You commanded the fleet that escorted our last colony ship back across the barrier 50 years ago. You told our captain that humanity was a failed experiment in civilization. Do you remember that? Genkar's mandibles tightened. I remember. Good, memory is important. Vex's tone shifted, becoming businesslike. A holographic conference would be more productive than this radio play. I'm transmitting coordinates. Proceed to them and prepare to receive diplomatic delegation. Attempt any scanning or weapons activation, and my defense platforms will reduce your ship to constituent atoms. Are we clear? Crystal clear, Colvan replied. The coordinates led them to a station that materialized out of stealth, a massive structure that dwarfed anything the Council had built. The architecture was uniquely human, functional but with aesthetic elements that served no practical purpose. Gardens visible through transparent sections. Art installations on exterior hulls. It was simultaneously a military fortress and a statement of defiance. We remained human. They were escorted to a conference room that felt designed to intimidate. One wall was transparent, showing Earth rotating in the distance, a reminder of what the Council had tried to cage. The other walls displayed real-time tactical information, fleet positions, defensive arrays, weapons systems far beyond Council technology. Grand Marshal Vex entered with her command staff. She was ancient by human standards, well past a century, but her eyes were sharp and clear. Medical technology had kept her vital, but time had still marked her with scars and gravitas that no treatment could erase. She sat across from the Council delegation without ceremony. Let me save us all some time, Vex said. You're here because something's killing you and your precious calculations can't stop it. You've come to ask the species you branded as dangerous, reckless warmongers to fight your war for you, and you expect us to just forget 50 years of exile and jump to save you. Am I close? Uncomfortably so, Tavera admitted. Vex smiled without humor. At least you're honest. Show me what you're facing. Admiral Genkar activated a tactical display showing the Karvesh advance, their impossible technology, the destroyed fleets, the consumed worlds. He held nothing back. The Council's desperation was too complete for pride. Vex watched in silence, her command staff taking notes. When the presentation ended, she leaned back and studied the Council representatives. You came here thinking we'd gloat, she said finally, that we'd make you suffer, negotiate from a position of supreme advantage, maybe let a few more of your worlds burn before swooping in to play hero. That's what a logical species would do, isn't it? Leverage maximum advantage from your weakness. Yes, Colvan admitted. Good thing we're not a logical species. Vex stood and walked to the transparent wall, looking out at Earth. You want to know what we've been doing for 50 years? We've been watching. We couldn't send messages out, but we could observe. We saw the Korvax get integrated as second-class citizens. We saw the Pelarians lose 200,000 to pirates before developing their own defense. We watched you turn the galaxy into a cold, calculated machine where suffering is just a number in your equations. She turned back to them, and we've been preparing. Not because we wanted revenge. Revenge is what a hurt species does. We prepared because we knew, eventually, you'd face something your mathematics couldn't predict. Something that required what you engineered out of yourselves. The ability to adapt through instinct, to fight beyond logic, to care enough about strangers to risk everything. Then you'll help us? Tavera asked hopefully. We'll save you, Vex corrected, but not because you asked. We'll do it because those refugee populations you're abandoning, those colony worlds you're sacrificing in your retreat, They don't deserve to die for your mistakes. We'll fight for them. You just happen to benefit from our compassion. Your terms? Colvin asked. Full restoration of human citizenship in the Galactic Council. 3 permanent seats on the High Council. Formal apology entered into the official record. Reparations to be negotiated after the crisis. And, most importantly, Vex's voice hardened. When this is over, you don't get to exile species anymore just because they don't fit your perfect equations. The galaxy belongs to all of us, not just those who think the right way. The council delegation looked at each other. They had expected harsher terms, demanded resources, vassalage, perhaps even revenge. Humanity was asking for respect and an end to the council's worst policies. It was shockingly reasonable from a species they'd branded as dangerously emotional. We accept, Colvin said. All of it, Vex nodded. Then let me show you what humanity built in our exile. She activated the room's displays, and the council delegation saw humanity's true strength for the first time. Fleet after fleet materialized from stealth. Hundreds of capital ships, thousands of fighters, defense platforms, mobile fortresses. Technology that made council innovations look centuries obsolete. We've been monitoring your conflict with the Karvesh since it began, Vex explained. We've analyzed their tactics, their technology, their adaptation patterns. And we've developed countermeasures. You couldn't beat them because you tried to outcalculate them. That's the wrong approach. What's the right approach? Jenkar asked, his military mind racing to comprehend what he was seeing. Vex smiled, and for the first time it reached her eyes. You beat them by outfeeling them, by being unpredictable, by fighting with something they can't adapt to because they don't understand it. Heart. She turned to her command staff. Begin Operation Homecoming. Humanity is going back to the stars. The turning point, the Threshold Nebula, hung in space like a cosmic wound, a region where reality itself seemed unstable. The Karvesh had claimed it as a staging ground for their assault on the core worlds. 7 council fleets had tried to retake it. 7 fleets had been destroyed. Now the human armada approached. Grand Marshal Vex stood on the bridge of the Phoenix, humanity's flagship and the symbol of their resurrection. Around her, the command crew worked with the controlled chaos that characterized human operations. It looked disorganized to council observers, but there was method in the madness. Humans adapted in real time, making intuitive decisions that no AI could calculate. All ships report ready, Marshal, Commander Hassan announced. He was 4th-generation military, his grandmother having served in the original Korvax rescue mission. Council forces are holding position at the coordinates you specified. Good. Vex studied the tactical display. The Karvesh controlled the nebula with approximately 200 vessels, smaller than their main fleets but still more than enough to overwhelm conventional forces. Admiral Jenkar, your forces will engage their forward elements on my signal. Make them commit to the attack. The Valorian Admiral's hologram flickered beside her command chair. In the weeks since first contact, he had learned to trust human tactical instincts even when they defied conventional wisdom. Understood. My forces are ready to play bait. It's not bait if you don't sell it, Vex reminded him. Fight like you mean to win. The Karvesh need to believe this is a standard council. Salt will give them a convincing performance. The council fleet rebuilt, with human weapons but still flying under their own colors, advanced into the nebula. The Karvesh response was immediate and overwhelming. Their vessels emerged from the spatial distortions that characterized the nebula, weapons already firing. Vex watched the battle unfold with the detachment of someone who had seen too many wars. The council ships fought well, using the tactics human advisors had taught them, but the Karvesh adapted quickly. Their biomechanical vessels learned from each engagement, evolving their strategies in real time. They're doing it again, Jenkar reported, his voice tight with frustration. Learning our weapon frequencies, adapting their armor. At this rate, we'll be completely ineffective in 30 minutes. 27 minutes, Vex corrected, checking her calculations. Which is exactly on schedule. Commander Hassan, activate the empathy shields. Throughout the human fleet, a new technology came online, the result of 50 years of desperate innovation. The shields appeared to be standard energy barriers, but they operated on principles no council species had discovered. They were quantum entangled with their operator's consciousness, adapting based on intuition rather than calculation. The human fleet entered the battle. The difference was immediate and dramatic. Human vessels moved with a fluidity that seemed impossible, dodging attacks before they were fired, targeting weak points that hadn't existed moments before. It wasn't because human computers were faster. It was because human operators felt the battle, anticipated movements through pattern recognition that operated below conscious thought. All ships, weapons free, Vex commanded. Show them what we learned in Exile. The Phoenix's main weapons fired, not the energy beams or plasma bolts typical of space combat, but something humanity had innovated. Quantum disruption torpedoes that existed in multiple states simultaneously until they struck their target. The Karvesh couldn't adapt to weapons that didn't follow conventional physics. Explosions rippled through the Karvesh formation. Their ships, designed to learn and counter known technologies, couldn't process attacks that defied their understanding of how weapons worked. "They're trying to adapt," Commander Hassan reported. "Karvesh vessels are attempting to analyze our weapons signatures." "Let them try," Vex said calmly. "Fire solution Gamma 7. The human fleet shifted tactics entirely, abandoning the quantum torpedoes for focused kinetic strikes, essentially railguns firing solid projectiles at relativistic speeds. It was ancient technology, the kind of weapons humanity had used before joining the Council. The Karvesh, which had evolved to counter sophisticated energy weapons, were struck by what amounted to sophisticated rocks traveling at a significant fraction of light speed. More Karvesh vessels ruptured and died. "They're confused." Genkar's hologram showed genuine amazement. "You're cycling through completely different weapon systems every few minutes. They can't establish a pattern to adapt to." "That's the point," Vex replied. "The Council tried to beat them with superior technology. That's a losing game against an enemy that evolves. We're beating them with unpredictability. Every captain in my fleet has autonomy to choose their own weapons and tactics. There is no pattern because we're making it up as we go. It was madness by Council standards. It was heresy against every principle of coordinated military doctrine. It was working." The Karvesh fleet began to fracture. Their collective intelligence, so effective at analyzing and countering logical patterns, couldn't process a battle where every enemy ship fought differently, where tactics changed moment to moment based on intuition rather than calculation. "All ships, Beethoven Protocol," Vex commanded. It was the most human tactic imaginable. The entire fleet began transmitting classical music at high power, not as a weapon but as noise. Chaos injected directly into the Karvesh communication networks. The aliens, which coordinated through pure information exchange, suddenly found their networks flooded with emotional, irrational, beautiful sound. Their formation collapsed entirely. "Now," Vex said quietly, "all ships full assault. Target their command vessel." The human fleet converged on the largest Karvesh ship, an organic nightmare of biomechanical architecture that pulsed with stolen life force. Quantum torpedoes, kinetic rounds, plasma weapons, and even experimental gravity mines struck it simultaneously. The command vessel shuddered, its adaptive armor trying desperately to counter multiple attack vectors at once. It was learning, evolving, adapting, but not fast enough. The final strike came from the Phoenix itself. Vex had saved their most radical weapon for this moment, a consciousness bomb. It was technology that weaponized human empathy, broadcasting emotional patterns so intense, so chaotic, that any collective intelligence would be overwhelmed. Dr. Tanaka had warned that it was dangerous, possibly unethical. "We're essentially attacking them with feeling," she'd said. "With grief, joy, rage, love, every emotion concentrated and amplified. It could shatter their hive mind." "Good," Vex had replied. "If they want to consume the galaxy, let them taste what they're trying to destroy." The consciousness bomb detonated not in space, but in the quantum realm, where the Karvesh maintained their collective intelligence. Every human thought, every emotional memory from 50 years of exile, the pain, the determination, the love for lost colonies, the hope that sustained them, flooded into the Karvesh network. The alien hive mind, evolved to process pure information, couldn't comprehend it, couldn't categorize emotions into tactical data, couldn't adapt to something that operated outside logic. The command vessel died, its collective consciousness shattered by an overload of human feeling. The remaining Karvesh ships lost coordination immediately. Without their hive mind, they were just individual vessels, still dangerous, but no longer the unstoppable force that had terrified the galaxy. All ships, finish them, Vex commanded. The battle that followed was brutal but decisive. Human and Council forces, fighting side by side, systematically destroyed the fragmented Karvesh fleet. Some alien vessels attempted to flee. None made it out of the nebula. When the shooting stopped, the Threshold Nebula belonged to the Allied forces. Commander Hassan pulled up casualty reports. 47 Council ships destroyed. 12 human vessels with critical damage. Total personnel losses 14,000. Vex closed her eyes briefly, feeling the weight of every death. The Council would see those numbers as acceptable losses for strategic victory. Humans would mourn them individually, remembering names and faces. Admiral Genkar, she transmitted to the Council commander, your forces fought well today. The Valorian's hologram showed an expression she'd never seen from his species. Genuine respect. Marshal Vex, I've commanded fleets for 5 centuries. I've never seen anything like what you just did. You defeated them with chaos. We defeated them with humanity, Vex corrected gently. The Karvesh were perfect predators against logical opponents. But they never faced an enemy that fights with heart and adapts through instinct. That's what you lost when you exiled us. Not warriors, but people who care enough to be unpredictable. She turned to her communications officer. Get me a channel to all ships, both human and Council. It's time they heard the truth. The transmission went out across the entire fleet. Thousands of vessels from dozens of species, all waiting to hear from the human who had just achieved what the Council deemed impossible. This is Grand Marshal Vex to all Allied forces. Today we won the first major victory against the Karvesh. But let me be clear, we didn't win because humans are better warriors. We won because we remembered something the galaxy forgot. That strength without compassion is tyranny, but compassion without strength is meaningless. The Council tried to make the galaxy logical, predictable, safe. They created a civilization so ordered that it couldn't adapt to true chaos. We're going to fix that. Starting now, we fight not just to survive, but to prove that a galaxy with room for emotion, for unpredictability, for those who fight for strangers, that galaxy is worth saving. Today, the Karvesh learned that humanity is back. Tomorrow, we teach them why they should have left us alone. The transmission ended to silence. Then slowly, acknowledgement signals began appearing from Council ships. Not the standard military protocol responses, but personal messages. Gratitude, respect, hope. Humanity had returned to the galaxy. And the galaxy would never be the same. Epilogue. New dawn 6 months later. The reconstructed Council chamber looked different now. The old crystalline walls remained, but new elements had been added. Viewports showing real stars instead of simulated perfection. Art installations from various species, including several human works. And, most significantly, 3 new seats at the High Council table, marked with Earth symbol. The Karvesh threat had been neutralized after 6 months of coordinated human Council operations. The aliens hadn't been exterminated. Humanity had insisted on that. Instead, the remaining Karvesh had been contained in a quarantine zone where they could evolve without threatening the galaxy. Some species had protested this mercy. Humans had been adamant. We don't exterminate species just because they're dangerous, Ambassador Sarah Chen had argued, granddaughter of Michael Chen carrying on his legacy. We remember what it's like to be exiled for being inconvenient. Now, at the formal ceremony restoring humanity to galactic society, Sarah stood before the assembled Council wearing the same diplomatic uniform her grandfather had worn 50 years ago. She had his eyes, his voice, and his conviction. Supreme Arbiter Kolvan stood with her, ancient, humbled, but still present. He had insisted on participating despite his failing health. Some things required witnesses. 50 years ago, Kolvan began, his 6 eyes dimmer than they had been but still sharp. This Council committed a grievous error. We judged humanity by our standards and found them lacking. We called them too emotional, too unpredictable, too dangerous. We were correct on all counts. We were also catastrophically wrong about what those traits meant. He gestured to the memorial wall that now dominated one side of the chamber. Names of those who had died in the Karvesh War, both human and Council species together. General Marcus Reyes's name from the original story appeared there too, having led human forces in one of the final battles before his death at 113 years old. Emotions are not weakness, Kolvan continued. They are the force that drives beings to fight beyond logic, to sacrifice for strangers, to adapt when calculation fails. Unpredictability is not chaos. It is the ability to survive what no model can anticipate. And being dangerous is not the same as being evil. Sometimes the galaxy needs dangerous people willing to stand between civilization and extinction. He turned to Sarah Chen. Ambassador, on behalf of the Galactic Council, I formally apologize for the exile of humanity. We were wrong. We ask not for forgiveness that must be earned, but for the opportunity to learn from you as you once learned from us. Sarah took a moment before responding, and Kolvan saw her grandfather in her pause, the same deliberate consideration before speaking. Supreme Arbiter, we accept your apology, she said. Not because it undoes 50 years of isolation, but because growth requires acknowledging mistakes. Humanity spent 5 decades in exile building ourselves into something stronger, but we also spent that time watching the galaxy, seeing what happens when order becomes oppression, when logic becomes cruelty. You're right that we're dangerous, but our danger lies not in violence, it lies in our refusal to accept suffering as mathematically necessary. She activated a display showing the Reformed Council Charter, rewritten with human input over the past months. These amendments ensure that no species can be exiled for being different. They create review processes for council decisions that affect entire civilizations. They mandate empathy protocols, using actual beings from affected populations to evaluate impact, not just running calculations. It's messy, it's complicated, it's going to create conflicts that your old system avoided. It's also right. Counselor, Tavera, her crystalline form now completely healed from stress fractures, rose to speak. The charter passes with unanimous approval. Let it be recorded that this day the Council learned what humanity tried to teach us 50 years ago. Feeling is not the opposite of thinking. They work together. And when they do, civilization becomes something worth preserving. The ceremony continued with formal votes, legal declarations, and all the bureaucratic necessities of galactic governance. But the moment everyone would remember came at the end, when Grand Marshal Vex, now 114 years old and finally retiring, was given honorary life membership on the High Council. She approached the podium slowly, her body failing despite the best medical technology. But her mind was sharp, and her voice carried the weight of lived experience. I won't be around much longer, she said bluntly, in the direct human style that still made some council members uncomfortable. So let me leave you with this. For 12,000 years you built a galaxy that valued predictability over possibility. You created order so complete that it couldn't adapt to true threats. You mistook emotional restraint for wisdom, and mathematical certainty for truth. You almost died because of it. She looked around the chamber, meeting eyes from dozens of species. Humanity saved you, not despite our emotions, but because of them. We felt the weight of those we'd never met. We grieved for strangers. We fought for principles instead of calculations. That's what you called dangerous. That's what you exiled us for. That's what saved your lives. Vex's expression softened slightly. But here's the thing you need to understand. We didn't save you to prove we were right. We did it because it was right. That's the difference between our species and your old way of thinking. We don't need to be vindicated. We need to be useful. We need to matter. And if that makes us dangerous, then the galaxy needs more dangerous species, not fewer. She paused, gathering her final thoughts. In your archives, there's a recording of Ambassador Chen's last words before exile. He said you'd regret casting us out. He was right. But I hope you'll remember this moment too. The moment when you learned that sometimes those who feel too much are the ones willing to sacrifice everything. Sometimes the emotional, unpredictable, dangerous species are exactly what the universe needs. The chamber erupted in acknowledgement signals, not the polite applause of human culture, but the various expressions of respect from 843 species. Some hummed, some flashed bioluminescence, some released chemical signatures of approval. Together they created a symphony of acceptance. Humanity had come home. But more importantly, the galaxy had learned to value what humanity represented, the courage to feel, the strength to care, and the determination to fight for what's right even when logic says it's impossible. As the ceremony concluded, Sarah Chen found Vex standing before the memorial wall, her hand resting on General Reyes's name. He would have liked this, Vex said quietly. He always believed we'd come back. Not for revenge, but for redemption. We got both, Sarah replied. No. Vex smiled. We got something better. We got the chance to prove that being human, being emotional, unpredictable, and dangerous is exactly what makes us heroes. She turned to leave, then paused. Take care of them, Ambassador. All of them. The Council species who feared us, the refugees we saved, the civilizations yet to emerge. Take care of them the way only humans can, with hearts too big for logic and courage too stubborn for defeat. We will, Sarah promised. That's what we do. As Grand Marshal Sarah Vex left the council chamber for the final time, the galaxy watched. Humanity had been exiled as a failed experiment. They had returned as the galaxy's salvation, and in the end, that was the most human thing of all, to be cast out by those who didn't understand you and to save them anyway. Because sometimes the most dangerous thing in the universe is a species that refuses to stop caring.